This episode of Legacy Battle is sponsored by W Energy Drink.
W Energy is a more affordable and healthy sports drink option with over 10 plus flavors, no artificial fillers or dyes, made to prevent crashes, jitters, and angst.
Go to www.wdubby.gg and order your sports drink today. Put in the promo code Legacy Battle for a 10% discount. Thank you for watching. Welcome back to another episode of Legacy Battle. My co-host tonight from Gridiron Battle Zone, Brian King, Steelers Nation South, Rollo Cawthon. We have an interview for you today. We are joined by an 8-year NHL Center / winger with the Penguins, Wings, Leafs, and even got a few games in there with the Nordiques. Boy, do I miss those logos. 4 seasons, over 20 goals, and 2 over 30. After his playing days, he became a coach. He even coached Team Finland to a bronze medal. I know we'll be asking about that a little bit later at the World Championships. So we want to welcome former Penguin here. You know how we love our Pittsburgh players here. So we got Doug Shedden. Doug, thank you so much for coming on.
Hey guys, it's great to be on. It's always great to talk to Pittsburgh people about the Penguins. I love that place.
Brian, start us off.
So, Doug, you were born up in Wallaceburg, Ontario, and played some of your early hockey with the Hamilton Finn Cups and Kitchener Rangers. So how did you get introduced to hockey, and what were those OHL days like for you?
Well, actually, I moved from Wallaceburg to Barrie, Ontario when I was about 7 years old. So actually, I played all my minor hockey in Barrie, which was a great program. It was a small town at that time, but like Wallaceburg was smaller. But and then in those days, obviously, we didn't know much about your stepping grounds. Like you go from, Pee-wee to Bantam, midget. And then all of a sudden my coach is saying, well, you're going to play in junior A next year. And what's that league? So anyway, I got drafted by the Hamilton Finn Cups as a 16-year-old. So that was my, stepping into junior hockey and playing against 20-year-olds and guys like L.C. Cord that were pretty tough guys and Ben Wilson and stuff like that. So, but that, that's how, that was the ladder you had to go. You had to go through that ladder to get up there, and got traded to Kitchener, and then I got traded to Sault Ste. Marie for a shitty player called Paul Coffey.
So who's that guy?
Yeah, probably the best thing ever happened to me was I got traded to Sault Ste. Marie because Terry Crisp was the coach up there at that time, and he taught me how to be a pro. And you're a teenager and you're growing up and you're having some fun, off the ice and stuff like that. And he really taught me what it took to your next step to get the NHL. And I made the NHL right out of junior.
So you talk about going up that ladder, during your rookie season there with the Penguins on January 2nd, 1882, you recorded your first career hat trick in Pittsburgh versus the Hartford Whale. According to the box scores, you only took 3 shots all game, and they all 3 went in. So do you remember that game, and how did it feel to really light it up that night?
Well, I don't remember the game. I remember scoring 3 goals, obviously. And it was on Greg Millen, too, that used to be a former Penguin. And I do remember the next night we went in and played Hartford, and I had another goal and assist, and we won. I'm pretty sure we won, and I shared the Hockey Player of the Week with Wayne Gretzky. So that was a big that was a big memory because I got 3 goals that night to beat Hartford, and then a goal and assist the next day. And so yeah, that was a big. I think the NHL sent you a jacket at that time. You got Player of the Week, you got a jacket. So Gretzky got half the coat, I got the other half of the coat.
So, Doug, in the 82-83 season, you were named team MVP for the Pens. What was it like to receive that honor, and would you consider that your best individual accomplishment in hockey?
Yeah, because after my rookie year, I went home that summer and really had to do a little because I got sent down to Erie for 2 months or 6 weeks my rookie year. And I was having a pretty good rookie year, and I got sent down, and they picked up a couple older players, and so I got sent down, and I kind of had the attitude that summer that this is never going to happen to me again. I went home and worked hard and took care of myself, and so I went back and I wasn't drinking any beer during training camp in Johnstown with the boys and all that. So I remember George Ferguson called me Bible Bill. Like, he started calling me Bible Bill because I wouldn't go out and drink with the boys. And I said, hey, I got to have a good year this year. I got to have a good year, because if not, I don't. I know where it's going. And, I took care of myself, and I ended up having a great year. And to get that MVP honor and be a top scorer for an NHL team at the end of the year, even though we weren't a great team, we traded away a lot of good players that year, including George Ferguson. Carlisle got traded, maybe probably early in the next year, but it's I got a poster still that said "This Bud's for you," and you're the player of the year. That's pretty important.
So as we can tell here, we're moving up the timeline. We're going to come to a very important season. We talked to your teammate Paul Gardner about this, but I want to get your opinion. 83-84. Penguins only win 16 games. Eddie Johnston denies tanking.
Was it only 16? Really? Wow.
Yeah. Coach Leongotti says that they did tank. Like I said, EJ denies that. Your opinion, did the Penguins tank games to draft Mario Lemieux?
Well, it's funny because I think I had 34 goals. I was playing with John Shabbat and Troy Loney, and I had 34 goals, I think. Don't quote me on this. Maybe I got the years wrong, but I think it was. And we had 25 games to go, and I said, again, I'm trying to remember this, but I thought I was going to get 50. I told my wife, I said, I'm going to get 50 goals this year. The next day I showed up practice. I was online with Mitch Lamoureux and, some other guy from Baltimore. Didn't play power play the rest of the year, kind of thing. And, I'm saying to Bob Berry, I said, Bob, what's going on? And I love Bob Berry. Bob Berry was a good guy. He goes, well, they called up like 14 guys from Baltimore, right? So did they tank? I don't know, but they certainly give the American League guys a good look.
Absolutely. That's the good political answer there. There you go.
But you know what? As it worked out, it saved the franchise. There would never have been a team without Mario. New Jersey got Kirk Mueller, and to this day, I love Kirk Mueller. He's a great guy. But Mario saved the franchise 3 different ways, 3 times. And then, obviously winning the thing with Crosby and all that. So, they got 30, probably 35, 40 years of those 2 guys. It's amazing.
Hey, Rollo, go ahead and ask your next one.
So, Doug, you were on some pretty bad teams to start your career in Pittsburgh. And then you guys wind up drafting some guy named Mario Lemieux. What was it like when he became a part of the locker room? And did you realize that he was going to be as special as he was when he first came into the locker room?
Well, I don't know if anybody remembers this, but the first day at Mount Lebanon Arena, first day of training camp, he stepped on the ice and fell flat in his ass. And Mount Lebanon's arena is not that big, but it was packed full of fans. And so, when you're young, you don't realize things, but, at the start, we didn't know how special he was going to be, but he was only 18 and he was big. And he had arms on him like spider's elbows. He couldn't lift any weights and he didn't look fast, but he had that stride that was deceiving. So as the year went on, obviously the first shift in Boston, he scores a pretty nice goal, burning, Ray Bourque. So as the year went on, we knew he was going to be special. At the start, it was questionable because his work ethic we didn't think was very good. But he's a big guy, and it doesn't look like he's working. And he was young. He didn't know the NHL game. But, halfway through the season, I think he still got 90-some points, 99 points his first year. So then
100,
you get
100.
And plus he was a great guy. And he was shy. His English language wasn't that good, and he was trying to quit smoking and all those type of things. But he was a really good guy.
Yeah.
And that's what makes those. I played with Mario. I played with Eisenman. I played with Peter Stastny and, Clarkey in Toronto. And what makes all those guys special is they're good people too.
Right. So 84-85 is a 35-goal season for you, your career best. You follow that with 32 the next season in only 67 games. So can you tell us a little bit about the success you had those 2 seasons and what do you attribute that?
Well, that second year I got traded to Detroit, I think, at the deadline. So I think I ended up with 34. But, it was disappointing to get traded because I knew Pittsburgh was, with Mario, we were growing. I don't know if Yager came the next year after I got traded. I got traded for Duguay. So that was really, you lived through the hard years and you knew the better years were coming. So that was a little disappointing because, I got traded at, that time the deadline was at midnight on a Tuesday night or something like that. And we were on the road for like 14 days coming through a West Coast. And our last game was in Washington coming home. I remember Mike Bullard and Normie Schmidt and a couple other guys, we went for dinner and, Mike Bullard and I were always roommates. So we get back to the room and phone rings at 12 o'clock and Mike Bullard goes, yeah, hey, EJ, how you doing? And all this kind of stuff. And I'm going, yeah, right. Don't be pulling that bullshit on me. And Bully goes, no, it's EJ. He wants to talk to you. I said, no, I'm not falling for that. I'm going to bed. And Bullard goes, EJ, I'll let Sheds call back. He ain't. So sure enough, EJ calls back. He says, yeah, Sheds, we made a deal. And I'm going, okay, where am I going? Like, I hope I'm going to a playoff team, like somewhere a playoff team. And he says Detroit. And I go, oh, they're in last place. Shit, here we go again, So anyways, but, original 16 was kind of, neat to go to original 16 and play with guys like Eisenman and Probert and those type of guys.
Well, Doug, you mentioned EJ. You played your first couple of seasons for him. That was during his first stint with the Penguins, and he, of course, came back about 10 years later and had a ton of success as well. So, what was it like playing for Eddie?
He's one of the greatest guys I've met in the game. And he's just an old hockey guy that's a lot of fun to be around, and he played a lot of golf in his time and. I love the guy. The guy was great. He was always honest with me, and I have no complaints. And I always loved running into him. He still lives in Pittsburgh, I believe, right?
Yeah, for sure.
He's got to be getting up there. What would be? He's high 80s. He's got to be high 80s.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Rollo.
So, Doug, in November 1986, you get to face the Penguins after being traded to the Red Wings. What was it like going into that game, and did you prepare for that game any differently? And nerves?
I think the score. What was the score in that game? If I can guess back, I think it was we won 2-1 or something.
Yeah, it was 3-1.
3-1. And I remember talking to Mike Bullard after the game. We met, and he goes, "It's the most boringest style team I ever played for. Like, how do you play for that team?" I said, "Well, the problem with Jacques Demers is if you're winning with 10 minutes to go, he plays the third and fourth line. But if you're losing, he plays the first top 2 lines. Just goes with 2 lines." And I remember that game. I remember talking to Bully afterwards. We had a lot of laughs. It was funny. But yeah, you always want to do good against your former team, and obviously, and you're a little nervous. And yeah, I'm a Pens. I love the Pens. So, but it's always a tough game, especially the first one.
In 2008, you coached for Team Finland in the World Championships. So what was it like to be the head coach of that team?
Well, I went over to Finland in 2005. I coached 10 years in the East Coast League and had some success. And so I went to IFK in Finland, which is Helsinki's team. And then the next year I went to Jokerit, another Helsinki team. And then Jari Kurri was running the national team, and he called me out of the blue and said, you want to have dinner? And I started to hear some rumors. I go, they're not going to pick me to coach the national team. That's a big deal to finish nationally. That's huge. So we went out for dinner, and he said, yeah, we want to coach our national team. So I couldn't believe it. But the World Championships were in Canada. They had an up-and-coming coach that they wanted to be my assistant, that he'd get some experience. So it was in Quebec City and Halifax. So you talk about a tremendous experience to coach those elite players like that, the Koivu brothers, Solani, I could go on and on. Like Backstrom, and it was incredible. And the fact that we lost to Russia in the semifinals 4-0, and they had young Ovechkin and Malkin and all those guys, and then we beat Sweden, which is a big rivalry. Finland, Sweden, huge rivalry. We beat them 4-0 in the bronze medal game. So that was a huge thing. It was huge, and certainly my family was there and in Quebec City, and that was one of the biggest. As my coaching career, that was a big deal.
I'm looking at that roster now, man. You guys were stacked. Yeah, you had Koivus, Solani, you said Kapanen, Ruutu, Olli Jokinen. I mean,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Yossi Jokinen. Yeah, wow. That's just incredible lineup there.
That was a pretty good team. Yeah.
Baxter and Niemi. Yeah, very nice. But so you actually won 5 championships as a coach. If you had to pick one of those teams, and I know that's always hard to do, but what do you think what was your favorite?
Well, yeah, it's a tough question. I won 5 in my first 10 years of coaching, so I thought it was going to be easy, right? Easy job and all. So that's difficult. I still think the biggest was the bronze medal in the World Championships, coaching Finland. That was the highest stage I've ever coached at. So I would think that was a pretty special moment. But I won back-to-back in Wichita, back-to-back in Memphis, and then one in Flint, Michigan. So they're all special, and those type of guys at those lower levels, they didn't make any money, but they worked so hard for you and went through the boards for you. And those people are really, they didn't get rich playing the game, but their attitude and their character, and I'll never forget how hard those guys worked for me.
So it seems today that you are enjoying retirement. I see a lot of fishing pictures, things like that. Are you still involved in the game in any way? And where could people find, what would people find Doug doing today?
Well, I coached last year in Germany. So
okay. Fantastic.
I'm not officially retired. So, I'm waiting for the phone call to ring. And if it rings again, if it's a nice place, and, North America, I kind of give up on. I'm getting to an age where I'm not going to do East Coast League team unless they, someplace close to Florida. But I will go back to Europe. My wife and I love Europe, so we'd go back there if it's the right situation. Number one for me, if the team has a chance to win, I want to do it. If a team doesn't have a chance to win, I have no interest. So, but other than that, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. I'd love to be a pro scout in the game somewhere with somebody, if some team's looking for that. And, if they want to send me to Europe, I know my way around Europe pretty good. So, I love the game. I don't want to get out of it. But if it is, it is. I love fishing. I love golfing. And I enjoy waking up every morning, putting flip-flops and shorts on and going outside.
Hey, Doug, what was the most memorable moment on the ice that you could tell us about? Something that when you sit down with your grandkids, you're telling them, hey, this is what happened with me.
Well, I guess there'd be a few of them. One that just popped in my head, that Gretzky and I, we're the same age, so we grew up playing hockey together, or minor hockey together. I was in Barrie and he was in Brantford. Not that we were in the same division, but we ran into each other at tournaments all the time. And we played against each other in the, I think it was the Brockville tournament, and they beat us 5-4. And he scored on a penalty shot, and I think I'm the one that missed. But growing up against Gretz all the time, and Paul Coffey and those guys. But Mario's first assist was on my goal, so that's very, that's a nice little trivia question. I still have that stick, which I'm going to sell one day. That is first assist. I still have it downstairs in my basement. So, but yeah, those are just memories. Like, they're all great, playing with Yzerman and Mario, and obviously Peter Stastny and Wendell Clark in Toronto and guys like that. It's just a, great memories of playing at that level, like it's very important.
Doug, whenever you were a boy, a young fan, who was it that you really looked up to at that time that was in the NHL?
Dave Keon, no question about it. I grew up in Ontario, so Dave Keon was a big part of the Leafs back in those days. And so the way he played the game, I loved it. And when he retired, I probably loved Bobby Clarke, the way he played. When I played against him, I thought he was an asshole, but Mike Buller and I called him God all the time because he used to get the advantage on the faceoffs all the time. But he was such a competitor for a little guy, and he was a great player, obviously. And but yeah, Keon, I loved Keon, loved him.
So you grew up in Ontario, and we'll get you out of here with this. What did it mean to you to get to finish your professional NHL playing career with the Toronto Maple Leafs? I mean, you just said that one of your heroes was when you were growing up was from the Leafs.
Well, again, Maple Leaf Gardens was the hockey god palace of anywhere for us in Ontario. So as a kid, we went down there and, watched the Leafs practice, or if you're lucky enough to go to a game. In junior, you played against the Marlies in that rink, which was a huge thrill to play in Maple Leaf Gardens. And then to go in there as a Penguin and play against the Leafs, in pro hockey was a huge thrill. And I remember my first game, I think I had a goal and 2 assists there. We beat them 5-3. And, your parents and all your buddies and your brothers and sisters are all at the game. So that's a big deal. And then when I eventually played my first game for the Leafs, they walk out, on Hockey Night in Canada, you see them walking out of their dressing room to the ice surface. So where cameras are at all times. That was a big deal. And then I blew my knee out that first game in Toronto. So I was out for a year after that. So I made my way back there again after that, after being out for a year. So, but, to be a Leaf in Ontario and Canada was a very special thing. So, yeah, that was a big thrill.
Well, thank you so much for your time and joining us today. It was awesome to reminisce you about the old Penguins days.
Anytime, guys. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
I remind everybody, hit that like, subscribe, notification buttons. Always important. Thank you for watching. We'll see everybody next time. Have a great night.